Okay, we are live right now for this special live soft skills workshop with my very own, I'd call him my life coach, just a legend, absolute legend, Mr. Nick Savory. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I think, of course, we're going to wait for a few moments just for everyone to come on live. But yeah, Nick is joining us from Brisbane, which is a city in Australia, which is north of Sydney, and it's a bit hot over there. But yeah, we'll see how many people we start getting on here. But yeah, I think before we jump straight into anything, I think maybe Nick, would you like to introduce yourself and just tell the guys a little bit about your background and what sort of experiences you've got, and also how we, maybe a bit of our backstory and how we met and how we worked with each other and all the good stuff there also.
Yeah, of course. And I know we always call each other legends, but just, yeah, it's like what you see in others is only what you see in yourself. So thank you for that intro, mate. Well, we've known each other for, I was thinking about this the other day, I think it's got to be like coming up for 5 years now, 5-6 years. And I suppose when I met Danny, I had been doing recruitment within data and analytics and business intelligence for about 5 years. But behind that, I was also a coach, so more transformational coach, working with individuals to improve their performance and get the life that they want, or work towards that away from where they were. And since then, I'm now an NLP trainer. I'm a communications and language communication specialist, so working around behavioral types and profiling people. I work with individuals and businesses. So I'm very fortunate to work with 2 of Australia's top 4 banks, and I work with their managers and team members to improve communication skills, ultimately achieving higher performance. And with individuals, I work with individuals around improving confidence, advanced presentation skills, letting go of anything, like we were talking before this, Danny, weren't we, about some people can get nervous before going on to stage, or maybe just to do a presentation to colleagues. So I work with people around how to get rid of those fears and give them resources, how they can move forward and be the best that they can be in that scenario. And I suppose my ultimate goal is I bring Eastern philosophy and Western philosophy together, and I'm really supporting people to take those Eastern philosophies of, inner fulfillment and inner happiness, and take those Western philosophies of living your life in your dreams, and bring those together so that you can live the life of your dreams.
That's so amazing.
Yeah,
I've been on the receiving end of some of Nick's wholesomeness and goodness and all of the energy that he gives to everyone that he deals with. So I can't say any more words about how thankful and grateful I am for having met Nick, and also to have him as almost like a confidant or a really good person that I can just kind of ask for help almost at any point in time. I've gone to you so many times in the past where I've been uncertain, or I'm trying to toss up between different things and don't know what to do, need some direction or clarity. And Nick's got me through everything almost every single time without fail. So thank you again, Nick, for all
Danny,
of your help.
it's my pleasure. And I was just remembering something that came through in my meditation practice this morning, and it was around you need a strong foundation in order to get to where you're going. And I think, how we know each other, just looking at you now doing this, if we go back to five years ago, whenever it was, when I placed you in my analytics recruitment hat on, and you went into CBA, and you were so passionate and so energetic, willingness to learn. And I know, I think you were using R at the time, and you had to learn Python from scratch. And you went from a data analyst to a data scientist, I would call you a data guru, in my experience. And the conversations we have now around data just blow me away. And the fact that I'm now honored to sit on this call with you, talking about soft skills for data professionals, I'm very grateful for that, because I think that just demonstrates, so you put in the hard work for that foundation, and now look at how you've evolved over the last 5 years and the journey you've been on. It's awesome.
Yeah, I always think back to when I started wanting to move from the data analytics into the data science, and just how much of a struggle it was back then, because these days there's a lot of resources, there's a lot of great people who are posting some really awesome stuff on LinkedIn that you can learn from, and I think there's a lot of things that you can use to help yourself on your journey. I think back when we were getting started and we met each other, I kind of had to do a lot of that by myself, and it was a struggle. I think I look back to that time and I wondered to myself, like, how did I really make it through and actually pick up all these things and get to wherever I am now? And one of the main things that comes through is probably through all the great people that I met in person, through the mentors that I had, through all the different conversations that I've had with some of my other mentors, where I could kind of ask questions and be as vulnerable as possible, and let people know where I want to get to, where I'm lacking, and asking for advice. I think, it's been really, really, really awesome to have so many great people and great supporters to help me out.
And I think as well, having, and this is my opinion, I've worked in as a recruiter and a coach in data analytics, and technology, but obviously my passion is data analytics, because I think you can remember, I interviewed like hundreds, if not thousands of data specialists, ranging from data scientists to data engineers to data analysts to data visualization, BI developers, predictive analytics. And what I noticed in all of those interviews, if you like, and those connections, was I saw all these amazing people that had all this knowledge and understanding, but they sort of lack that communication piece. They were great, because the default, if we go into the past, the default position of a data scientist, maybe, or a data engineer, was you got to sit in a corner, or you got to sit in your booth, and you just did what you did, right? You use that technical genius that you all have, and everybody has that on the call, right? Otherwise, whoever's on the call, you have that genius in you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. But the reason I bring that up is because what I think you demonstrated in terms of working through those struggles is, out of all those thousands and thousands of people that would have been doing the same thing in Sydney, so if you just think about on a global scale, what you did was you created a niche for yourself, and you worked on your communication skills, didn't you? You really put yourself out there, and you had to work hard at those communication skills, but not just those communication skills. You had to get a broader understanding of everything. I remember sitting there one day and thinking, you just made things look easy, effortless, and effective across all areas. There was remember that time you got into I think it was algorithm driven trading. My memory is whatever you were doing, and I was like, where's this guy got all this information from? And that was from like 3 years before you were a data analyst using SQL and R, right? But through those 3 years, you learned to communicate. You learned Python, and you didn't just learn Python. You studied it. Like, I think you were at home in weekends when we were talking sometimes, and you were studying Python, and you made those connections. So those are the three things I think you demonstrated, and that's all testament why you're doing what you are today.
Yeah, I think back, and it was when I was learning all those things, I was just really passionate about what I was doing. I really believed in what I'm learning now. I can actually use those skills to help businesses, help other people, help myself, help my family. And I wholeheartedly believed in that. And I wanted to always put my best foot forward and just kind of just be there and show up. Sometimes when I was at home and studying, I didn't really feel like studying. There were plenty of other things that I could have been doing. But I think I just tried to consistently always put in some time to study a little bit. to keep moving forward. There's like I tried to always improve myself at least, I don't know, maybe 1% every day. And then that compounds to, I don't know what it is every year, but there's some really interesting visualizations of that where I think it's like 100 times better, or I don't know, something crazy like that. But yeah, I think, putting all those different, I think the breadth of learning that I had in my apprenticeship phase, when I was learning all these things I had to start using at work, and learning all these different disparate fields and things, and trying to make the connections between everything, was very challenging. But it was, I think, even more challenging because not only did I have to learn it technically, but I had to then kind of present it back to the business stakeholders that I was working with. And it's very difficult to try and get someone who has less understanding of the math and the data and all the technical aspect of things, and try to get them on board with whatever initiative that you wanted to drive. And I thought that really focusing in on the communication piece and understanding early on that, yes, I could go and do all the hard work, the technical work, but if I can't explain what I've been doing and describe the different analyses that I've done, or get the point across to actually drive some action, then what are we really doing here in terms of learning all the technical stuff? So I've been quite, I think, like, I would say results oriented in that sense, but I've always really enjoyed learning all the things that I've picked up over the years. And I think I really enjoy learning, like learning new things. It doesn't matter if it's in data, if it's doing some sort of sport or doing something in the gym. I always try and get to the mastery of whatever I wanted to, whatever I put my mind on. And I think having the additional yards of wanting to take other people through that same journey, I think that's one of my my voice is, let me get some water.
Look, on that point, okay, you just reminded me of so many things. So when I think about that what you're saying, that mastery and that learning and that knowledge that most people, most professionals in data, right, that's probably the process that everybody goes through and motivates them, is that passion and that learning for data and for processing, not just for the data and the process, but what the data can do to the business or to the group. You know, it doesn't have to be business driven, but this conversation is going to be business driven. And one thing I've seen throughout my 10 years in Australia, doing 7 years in data analytics and BI, one thing I see is, you know, all these really talented people that great at process, great at data, and they have this enthusiasm and passion for it. Yet the business world has changed, and the expectation, in my opinion, now from stakeholders is, you know, you have to be able to tell that story. And what stakeholders want is they don't necessarily want somebody to stand up and speak technical jargon to them, going through algorithms in, you know, the whole complex data formulas. That's important, don't get me wrong. So the work you do is really important in data, but now it's gone from 5 years ago. Data was sort of, you know, operational. You know, businesses and business leaders in particular were looking at it and going, okay, how can we improve operations? How can we save money? How can we use this data to run our business better? And that's no longer the case. The case now is data is their business. They do not make any decisions on the future of their business without looking at data. So coming back to the storytelling piece, that's why when you see people in presentations, in my opinion, you know, you need to be able to really communicate to them on an emotional level and on a logical level as well. But you need to tell that story, because the story of process telling is the process of storytelling is just a process. So you're all naturally good at processes. If you're in data, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of data people, coaching them, and one thing I can tell you, 99% of them are very internal dialogue. And when I mean internal dialogue, they're great at process, they're great at information, they're great at knowledge, and they're great at understanding. So you're already great at processes, and storytelling is just a process. If you break a story down, it's a process, isn't it? You just have to go through that. But that's so important now, and in business as well. I meet with managing directors, founders, sales directors, technical directors, CIOs, CTOs, and actually three things. I'd say the three things that the commonality they all have, because I'm not interested in about what are they looking for in a role, because I can get that from the JD and talking to other people. What I'm interested in is, okay, what behavioral traits do you need in the data person coming into this team, into your business? What do they need? And the three things they say are communication. They need to be awesome communicators and be adaptable, not just communicate to technical people, communicate to business stakeholders as well, maybe the board at times. Okay. And they need to be passionate, and I suppose after coaching so many data professionals, whether it be, general managers, team leaders, data scientists, individual sort of data engineers, one thing I notice is their default is to go technical. And you know what you were saying before the call, Danny, when we said, I hope you don't mind sharing this, but we having a chat before the call, and we said, I'm so glad I don't get as nervous as I did when I started doing these live casts. Right? You said that, and I'm the same. It's taken time to get over that, and the reason I mention that is because what happens generally to people when they stand up to present, whether that to be to one person or to 10 or to 1,000, okay, is we run over everything days leading up to the presentation. We run over everything in our minds. We know the content. We rock up and we're full of energy and we're full of enthusiasm and we've got all these great ideas. And then we step towards that stage, whatever that stage is. Could be somebody calling up from a group of 10, and you get up, and what happens is unconsciously the mind starts feeling unsettled, because it's like, oh, this is all new to me. I haven't done this before. And that then affects the nervous system, which creates that nervousness, which then affects your vocal cords. And you start going, and maybe you don't speak as clearly as you possibly could. So it affects your whole physiology. And then what happens, unfortunately, is you default to where you're comfortable. And if your default comfort zone is technical, you are not going to engage with a high percentage of your audience. And that's, unfortunately, that's the truth. Okay. You might think you've done a great job, because we'll talk about communications. There are 4 types of communication preferences within people, and everybody's unique. Everybody has a primary communication profile, if you like, a representational system, we call it. And there's visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and internal dialogue. Now, if you go technical, you're generally going to be only talking to the ID people, which is 20% of your audience. So if you've got 100 people in there, right, you're only going to be speaking to a very small amount of people in that audience. And that's why these soft skills are so important, in my opinion and experience. You just gotta go, okay, this is what I'm going to do today. I'm going to learn to communicate, because the future of data is communication. And that's just not my opinion or in my experience. Deloitte released a paper, I think it was like 2 years ago, and it was called The Path of Prosperity. Okay, this is in Australia, by the way. So this would be replicated throughout the world. And do you know what Deloitte found about the future of prosperity? It's
what did they find, Nick?
Why the future of work is human. And when you look through that report, they list technologies, artificial intelligence, robotics, everything that we see and we're part of, right? We're all part of that. If we're in a data role or a technology driven role, we're all part of that future that everybody sees. But the biggest skill they highlighted in Australia over the next 15 years is customer service. Now, when you break down customer service is communication. It's speaking with other people. And that's why these skills are so important. So I would encourage you and suggest to do what Danny did. Take all that energy and all that passion that you have for your craft, you know, whatever arena of data or technology you're in, take that passion, take that enthusiasm and fly and run with it and become a master. But at the same time, become a masterful communicator too. And you can do that, can't you? Danny is living proof. You know, I'm living proof that you can, with hard work, with persistence, no matter what your background is right now, no matter how good or bad you are as a communicator right now, you can always do more.
It's very profound. I think
that's what I see and hear, and that's my feeling of the market, you know. And it's only gonna get communication is just gonna get so important because these business leaders, whether you're in a startup, right, Series A, B, C, D startup, so maybe you got no money, maybe they're broke and they're living off the back of family and friends, or maybe they've got some really good investment happening from a VC fund, which is great either way. But data drives, remember what we said, data is driving business and it's driving decisions. So they haven't got time. A business leader or a founder or a C-level executive hasn't got time to go through what you can do. What they want to know is, right, show me where we are now, talk me through what we can do, and show me how you're going to do it or how we can do it. And those conversations are quick, they're very informative, but they need to make a decision. So your communication skills and your data skills are of high importance to any business of the future.
100%. Can't agree more. I think when you were mentioning about that we're living proof that we can become great communicators if you put in the effort and the energy and the investment of your time to learn some of these skills. I think even before starting to work on these skills, I think everyone who's on the call right now, if you want to be a great communicator, you just need to flick the switch and tell yourself, I want to be a great communicator. I'm going to do what it takes to learn to be a great communicator. I think having that focus and that single point of energy to kickstart the rest of your learning is super, super important. It doesn't matter if it's for communication skills, for data science skills, for learning how to play a sports skill. I think if you really believe in yourself and back yourself and really have that almost like the one-minded focus that you'll do what it takes to get to where you want to be, having that momentum and impetus to move you forward is super important. Of course, we have to. Oh, you go, Nick. Sorry.
No, go on. Sorry, you finish off, dude.
I think, of course, having that spark to move forward, to go in the direction that you want to is really important, but you need to back it up with consistent effort and investment and time. And you need to keep putting in to your initiative to really get to where you need to go. I think too often we see people who they have that spark and they want to go somewhere, but do they have the discipline to keep putting in the work to really move them forward to where they need to be? I think that these are problems that everyone faces all the time when they're on their journey to success, to mastery, to wherever they want to go. Everyone faces these barriers daily to say, oh, should I be doing this? I could be resting, I could be doing something else, or I could be scrolling through Facebook or whatever it is. There's moments in time where you have the choice to tell yourself, yes, I know I want to be an XYZ. I want to be a great data scientist. What can I do in this moment to help me move closer to that goal?
Yeah. Yeah. And look, there's a couple of things that I live by in my training and coaching, and we work with people at any level. So, you know, like I say, it could be an entry level Danny Ma who's unsure about where they want to go with their future, up to an executive leader who wants to be able to deliver high impact presentations every time, you know, and that's the sort of level we work with. But at the foundation, you know, foundation is a key word today. I can sense that already. So at the foundation, there's a couple of things we work on in NLP as an NLP trainer and master practitioner. And the one that I love, which actually was part of the reason I started SourcePoint all those years ago, working with data people, seeing their full potential, that spark that Danny mentioned, right? But that if that spark doesn't illuminate fully, will you ever reach your true potential? Because everybody's got a spark. Everybody in the whole wide world has that unique genius within them, and that's something I believe in. But what we work with at the foundation of everything to encourage that spark to get brighter and brighter and brighter is a thing called the law of requisite variety. Now, it's a presupposition of NLP, so we presuppose this, but this is at the foundation of everything I'm about. And the law of requisite variety is the person with the most or the greater degree of behavioral flexibility has control of the situation. And one thing I love, and it can be quite challenging, and it's still quite challenging for me, I learned this many, many years ago, is there are no difficult customers or clients. There are only inflexible communicators. Now, I'd just like you to just think about that for a moment, because, and this is in my experience, okay, over hundreds and hundreds of people, most people, when they're in a meeting, what they're thinking about is, when can I speak? Because they've taken these days or hours or minutes or whatever it is to prepare for this meeting, and they're sat there, and in their head they're going, okay, yeah, this is great. You're really talking. I'm understanding what you're saying, but when can I say what I've prepared? And what that does is that creates an imbalance in the force. No, joking. In rapport. Okay, but there is a force in rapport, and an energy force, and we'll come on to that later if we get time. But that sort of breaks down rapport, and the law of requisite variety. Remember that whoever has the greater degree of behavioral flexibility has control of the system. Now, if you can master that, and I mean really master that, anything is possible, because it doesn't matter if you're in front of a CIO, Bill Gates, you know, whoever. You will create rapport, but you'll take your behavior and you'll be flexible, and you'll match their behavioral preferences. And you know, there's a great thing I love about rapport, and it says people love people who are like themselves. So in my opinion, you want to become a people expert in terms of communication, because you may or may not know this. You get 20 seconds. This is non-verbal, by the way. You get 20 seconds. Somebody meets you, and within 20 seconds, they've already made an unconscious decision about you. But wouldn't it be great? This is what I love about communication. Wouldn't it be great if while you're walking towards that person, or you're sitting down in a meeting with that person, you can change your behavior? In fact, you can look at them and profile them and make a quick determination on what their communication preference is, that representational system I mentioned earlier. Non-verbal, again, and there's different percentiles here, but I work with this one. 83% of communication is non-verbal. Just think about that. You don't speak, but you're communicating by the way you sit, okay? By the way you breathe, by the way you sit with your feet, you're communicating. You may not know that, but that's the truth, right? That's the deal. So what we have to do, in my opinion, as a suggestion, is learn these soft skills so that we can profile people easily, effortlessly, and effectively. And you can go into a room with that data, with that knowledge, with that understanding, but with that communication flexibility, so that you're not just a one-trick pony. You're not going to your default of technology, of data talk. You can be flexible. You know, I've got to share this with you because it came to mind. I worked with a guy a couple of years ago. Okay, I'm just going to say he lived in the UK. Okay, and his name was Dan. Now, Dan was a statistical analyst. This guy was a genius. Data was like in his DNA, right? It was in his blood. It was his spark. Like, data was his spark. But Dan could not communicate. And he came to me and I said, okay, how can I help you? And he said, the future of data is changing. I need to be able to communicate and share the story. At the moment, I can't even share how I feel about something in a team meeting. Now, Dan was 50 years old and he'd been in data all his life. Heavily process driven, heavily ID, lots of knowledge, lots of communication, lots of detail, but he couldn't communicate that. Now, it took 6 sessions with me, okay, and I supported him in every way that I did. And we use all these communication soft skills, and the advanced ones are for obviously more future courses and coaching down the line. But Dan took away, he said, look, Nick, he rang me and he said, Nick, I managed to share my thoughts and my feelings about a project we were working on. Now, that might seem like a simple thing to you, but for him, the spark got brighter and brighter. Now he's talking with his colleagues and, you know, he's creating rapport. He's using all the skills that we coached him on to become a better communicator. And it's like, you know, if you think about where he was before, his data was up here and his communication skills were down here. And now I would say they're probably there, because we can always do more. We can always get better. But his life's changed. His career's changed. And like Danny said, it's not just about your career and the people you interact with throughout your business day. It's you become a betterer partner, a betterer husband, a betterer wife, a betterer daughter, a betterer brother, son, all these things. Everything changes. Everything. And the great thing about the unconscious mind is the way you leave it is the way that it will stay, so it cannot go back. And that's how important rapport is. Rapport and communication. And that's like the foundational sort of entry level in my experience. But even rapport can, you know, and then we got into tonality. You know, tonality is so important, because if I was on here today, if Danny and I were on here today, we were like, so today we're going to talk about soft skills for data professionals. Would that be something of interest to you? I'd say no, it wouldn't be, because, you know, that's boring. That's somebody's default. But if we can talk about tonality, you know, I had a client, I love this. This is just so how powerful tonality is in rapport building, right? This goes back to, remember, 2 things. The person with the greatest degree of behavioral flexibility has control of the situation, but more importantly, okay, people like people who are like themselves. So I had this coaching client, right? I call him John, right? So John was a salesman. He was a technical salesman. He sold widgets. I don't know what the widgets were, you know, but they were things that went into engineering pumps. And most of John's job was actually on the phone selling to people. And he came to me and we did this communications training. And I remember we did the tonality part of rapport building. And he was like, Nick, he was like, so all I have to do is match somebody's tonality and I can build rapport with them. And I was like, yeah, just do it. You just have to raise, or, you know, just to listen to their tonality. Don't mimic it. Like, if I'm in front of a really high pitched woman, I'm not going to go, hello there, Sue, how are you? Oh, let's just talk about doing communications training, because I'm going to look an idiot, right? And she'll be calling security, going, get this guy the hell out of my office, right? But I can do it whereby I change my tonality. Anyway, what John did, he had this client, and If you haven't experienced them already, I can guarantee you at some point in your data career, you will. He had what is known as a difficult, grumpy stakeholder. They just didn't like life. Anyway, John was calling this woman for, I can't remember, let's just say it was 12 to 18 months. I think it was longer than that. But he's calling this woman. He said, Nick, every time I call this woman, he goes, hello, it's John from whatever, Widgets Are Us, right? And she was like, yep. Can you see the break in rapport? And we're not even on the call. Can you sense that? Right? So what would John do? He would go back to that unconscious mind we said earlier. His voice would change. He'd get a bit nervous, and he'd go, yeah, I'm calling from Widgets Are Us, and we sell widgets for pumps. And she'd be like, yep. Nothing. John would put the call down, and he'd schedule, because he was a bit of a brave soul like that, John. Like Danny said, he did whatever it took, right? So he would schedule a call for, say, 6 months' time. Anyway, he was so excited. I remember he was so excited to make this call. And he rang me a couple of months later. And he's like, Nick. I said, what? He said, I made the call. I said, okay, cool. I was like, what happened? He said, you'll never believe it. And I said, well, what happened? He said, I rang this lady and said, I'm John from Widgets Are Us. I want to sell you some widgets. And she went, what do you want? And he said, I want to sell you some widgets. And she went, okay, what widgets do you sell? And they got into a conversation. Now, it did take him a bit more time, but he sold us some widgets, right? But that's the key to rapport. It's unconscious, okay? It's nonverbal. It can include tonality and does, but there's so much of it that goes on around us. Did you know, this fascinates me. I'm on my spark now because I'm very passionate about the unconscious mind and why people do what they do and why they behave, and in particular communication. Now, the unconscious mind processes up to 2 million bits of information at any one time. It's online for all you data people who want to test this. It is online. It's the NLP communication model.
It's a lot of bits.
Yeah, but the thing is, it can't process that. That's what's coming in to from your external field. It can only process 134. So all the rest of it goes into the unconscious mind, into the treasure chest, or the treasure chest, should I say, of your unconscious mind. Now, just think about that. So if you're in front of a stakeholder, you've got 20 seconds for them to decide whether they're going to like you or not, or do business with you, or make a judgment on you, which is wrong, but people do that, okay? You get 20 seconds. Then you're filtering 2 million bits of information, but you can only do 134. And then you're thinking about, in your unconscious mind, when's it my time to talk? When can I share with you all the information that I've gained for you? I really want to impress you. I've spent hours and hours or days or maybe weeks preparing all this stuff. When can I do that? What happens to rapport? Gone. Because the mind is stimulated so much, you're not there. You might think you're there, but you're not there. Whereas if you can decide, as Danny did, as I did, to be a better communicator, to learn more about people, how to build rapport unconsciously, how to read somebody's physiology, how to read their mood. And we all do this. If you've been at uni, or even a family household, somebody can be in a really bad mood and you just know, don't you? They don't even have to speak because you sense it. There's a thing in NLP we use called sensory acuity. And we train people how to do this, how to pick up on those subtle differences, that slight movement, that muscle twitch, the energy that they're sharing. And that's so important. But more importantly, in data and these soft skills, in my opinion, and this is another great tribute. I won't mention the name of the bank, but I was working with a senior executive of one of Australia's top 4. And we were doing some training and coaching around communication skills. And we got to the representational part of the training. And remember, the representational part is somebody visual? Are they kinesthetic? Sorry, are they auditory? Or are they ID? So those 4 run consistently throughout human beings, no matter where you're from. And he actually said to me, we did that training, and I'll call him Tim. And he actually turned around to me and he said, do you know what? That makes perfect sense about a presentation we all just went to. And I said, why was that? And he said, well, these executive leaders took about 150 data analysts or data scientists or BI technical people, whatever they were, into this room. And they were talking about how data is going to change the course of the bank's direction. Okay. And he said 80% of us switched off and were on our phones. And when we left, we were like, what was all that about? So just think about that for a moment. And what I took from that was those people up on stage didn't know anything about communication styles and rep systems. Because if they did, they would have known that the high proportion of their audience were going to be heavily ID. How do we know that? Because they're in data, because they're in technology-driven process information. So they're generally introverts. This is a generalization, by the way. They're generally introverts who like to process and think about things and understand things before they take action. Now, these people at the front of the stage were probably highly visual. So they were talking about the picture, the image of where they were going. The ID people don't want to know about that. You know, they might a little bit, but really they want to know about, all right, tell us about this cool stuff, this new coding practice, or, you know, this new AI technology that we're going to bring in. It's going to revolutionize things, and we can be part of that. And I could learn all about that because that's what they want to do.
Mm.
You know, and when you know these things, it really does change everything. You know, it just goes boom, everything changes. And you can sense it very quickly. You can pick it up just by looking and hearing the language that somebody uses in a conversation. It's that easy.
One thing for rapport, I don't know if it might have been you who actually gave me this hint, but it was for the big thing that really helped me make a step change when I was interacting with people was to really try to put myself in their shoes. And not just like, oh, I'm going to view things from Nick's perspective, but it was more, I wanted to view things from Nick's perspective because I was genuinely interested in seeing how Nick sees the world. So then I can do what I can with my behavior and my communication to help us work together better, to help us achieve a goal together. So I can help him with a certain problem that he's going through. I think that genuine interest is the thing that separates the manipulation feeling of what some of these things where you get all these courses where people are going to try and teach you, here are 5 techniques for building better rapport with someone. But if you're not doing it with genuine intent to actually get some sort of great outcome from something that you want to communicate with, then there's no core behind it. There's no energy. And one of, I think, Nick, you can tell me if I got this quote wrong, but for Source Point Coaching, one of, I think on your business card, it says, energy flows where attention goes.
That's correct.
Yep. So, and that is a really profound statement. And I think that's definitely the case when you're talking with people. If you're doing your presentation and your energy is thinking about, or your attention is on, oh, what am I going to say next? How can I hit them with the fact that's going to get them onto my side? Are my feet pointing in the same direction as this guy? I need to show good rapport. And all of that, that's how communication breaks down, even if you do know all the tactics, because you're not there. Like you're not present in the conversation. You're not trying to, your energy is elsewhere in a nutshell.
Let's just try something here. So we'll just do this. We'll just play with it. I think it will work. Okay. So you've picked up on some really good points there. The first thing I'm going to use is the word manipulation. Okay. Now, I did a lot of coaching and training with he was a performance coach for the Romanian army, right?
Wow.
So this guy lived in Romania. right? And he was a performance coach, like not performance in terms of outcomes, but like physical training, you know, how to handle yourself in the field, you know, how to get your body to its peak performance. And he called me. I was still in Brisbane, and he called me and he said, Nick, I'd like to do some communications training. And I said, okay. And I'll just call him Bob. I said, okay, Bob, what's the problem? And he said, I have got to sell my services to generals and admirals of the Romanian army. And he said, Nick, I don't know if you've ever met anyone from Romania in the army, but they're generally very, very, don't want to talk, very strict. You can imagine, just think about at the moment, you know, a Romanian general and you walking in, having to sell him, you know, strength conditioning training for his troops. Just think about that for a moment. I don't know about you, but that was tough, right? So he said, that's what I want to do. So I trained him on rapport, rep systems, and how to use metaphors and meta programs, okay, in conversation. But we did it, and he loved it. And he rang me. I remember it's 5 o'clock in the morning, right? There's a big time difference between Australia and Romania. And he rang me and he's like, Nick. I said, what? He said, I feel like I'm manipulating people. And I said, well, how are you manipulating people? And he said, well, this works. All this stuff, you know, physiology, communication, language, tonality, meta programs, metaphors. It's amazing. It works. And I went, yeah, it does work, doesn't it? And I remember he was single at the time as well. And he said to me, he said, I have picked up more women in bars over the last, since I've learned this, than ever before in my life, right? And I was like, but that's a good thing. He said, yeah, but I'm manipulating people. I said, no, you're not. No, because just think about it. Manipulation is when, as just coming back to Danny's point, just think about Danny's point. Manipulation is when you use something, right, for your benefit, not the other person's, isn't it? That's my understanding of manipulation. You may have a different thought on it, and Danny and viewers. But what I said to him, I said, Bob, the difference between you and everyone else now is you now know more about communication than 99.5% of the population. I can't help that. That's the law of averages, statistics. It may be less than that, by the way, but you just know more about unconscious communication than the rest of the world. And he went on, and you know, he's writing blogs, he's created his own website, he's sharing his strength training techniques all over the world, and we still keep in contact. And the reason I say that, because I think, Danny, what you said, manipulation is good, but it's not manipulation if you're doing it for a greater good. And that greater good be, you know, and this is, look, you know, the greater good could be you having to do your job to feed your family. Right? It's not coming from a place of resistance, because that can be felt. The great thing about, remember I said to you about sensory acuity, and rapport is all about that unconscious non-verbal rapport is all about, like, there's a symphony, right? It's like bringing two things together. So there's a symphony, and there's an energy flow between those two things, right? And it's like, if you move a little bit, if you change your physiology, if you change your tonality, people like people who are like themselves. But when you're doing that, going to Danny's point, when you're thinking about the other person, just step outside and look at this as an observer. So we'll just do this now. So Danny, are you on a swivel chair?
No, I'm standing, actually.
You're standing. Okay. So I'd like you to lean in as much as you can, just lean in as much as you can.
Like in a good way or a bad way?
Yeah. No, just lean in. Just lean right in as far as you can, so it's not uncomfortable. Like that, right? So if Danny does that, right? Danny's leaning in, and I've seen this in meetings, and I lean back like this, right? We're not even in front of each other, but are we in rapport? No, because there's a breakdown, isn't there? But if Danny just leans there slightly again, and I'm talking to Danny and I'm leaning into Danny, hey Danny, how you going? What's your problem? How can I help? As against, yeah, hey Danny, what's your problem? How can I help? Now, everyone can sense the difference in that. Is that being manipulative? I don't think so. I think that's just using communication skills that nobody else uses for you to do a better job. Because if your job is to tell the story of data, right, that's what you got to do. You got to build rapport. And you can't build rapport if somebody's like, if Danny's standing and I'm sitting, who has control in the relationship? And I'm the person who's there to sell something or to discuss something or take a brief, do a requirements gathering session. Who's in control? Danny is. Am I going to get the information that I need? Probably not. So it's about that, the person with the greatest degree of behavioral flexibility has control of the situation. So you said that, and you said something really, really critical there as well. Because what do you think happens to your mind when you're focusing everything on the other person? What do you think happens? If you're looking at their every move, you're listening to their tonality, you're reading their profile. Are they V? Are they A? Are they K? Are they ID? And you're thinking about, how am I going to build rapport with this person? I need to build rapport with this person. You're not thinking in your head, when are you going to stop talking so I can talk? And when you're focusing all your energy on another person, right? Not in a stalkish way, but in a communication way. When you're doing that, they can feel that. And what they think is, wow, this person's really interested in what I have to say. I like them. They don't say that, but in their head, that's what they're saying. And this goes back years and years and years ago, and they used to say in sales, if you could get somebody to say yes unconsciously 5 times, they would buy from you. I don't use that, but that's just an analogy. Now, just think about rapport, unconscious rapport, tonality, listening to what they're saying, feeling what they're saying, seeing where they're trying to go. Are they moving towards a goal, or are they moving away from a problem? That is critical communication, because if somebody's moving towards a goal, right, which unfortunately in most Western societies, most businesses say they are moving towards a goal, when in fact they're probably moving away from a problem, the language changes, doesn't it? Because I'm going to say to that person, okay, Danny, that's great. So Danny, I'm leaning, again, I'm doing my physiology, my breathing, my tonality. So great, that's Danny. So you're moving towards this goal. That's awesome. So I'm just curious, why is it important for you to hit that goal in this time frame? And I just shut up and I listen. And Danny will say to me, well, because, we've got these restraints from up above. We need to get this new technology in, or we're not going to be able to advance to our next stage. Okay, great. So, but Danny, what you're saying then, basically, if I can go away and come up with some data with you, and I'll show you this data, I'll report back on it in whatever DV tool you're using, and I'll give you some really good data on how we can help you and support you achieving that goal, getting to that outcome of that new technology, so you can get to that next stage. Would that be of interest to you, Danny?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, it would, wouldn't it? But if they're moving, so if they're moving away from a problem, I wouldn't use that language. So it's about listening, because if I go into a meeting with somebody and I go, okay, Danny, what's going on? Well, Nick, we've got this real imminent problem. We need to fix it, and it's been happening for the last 6 months. I need to fix it because it's really holding us back. The team are demotivated. I'm unable to break free from this. So I'm going to say, okay, Danny, great, no worries. Let's talk about that problem for a bit. So I wouldn't necessarily say, why is it important to move away from that problem? Because you can probably tell from his energy and his communication that it's an urgent thing to do. Okay, Danny, that's great. So let me just understand the problem. So you want to go into the problem, understand it, obviously build that rapport, making sure that you understand, or they think you understand their problem. And you say, okay, great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go away. I'm going to create some data for you. I'm going to present it back using this DV tool. I'm going to present it back to you, and I'm going to show you how you can avoid repeating that problem again in the future. And it will help you move away from your current situation and problem, which will steer clear of any unmotivated team members in the future. Would that be of interest to you, Danny?
Yes.
Cool. So that's just 2 examples of language, how we can use language. And this is all, it's so easy to learn. And you use it easily, effortlessly, and effectively every single time. And I always say to my data coaching coachees. And they're like, oh, Nick, yeah, it's easy for you. You've been doing this. I was kicked out of school when I was 15, right? I worked in a chemical factory for 5 years of my life. I have no education, but my spark drove me to wanting to know more about the unconscious mind. And lucky me, I love it. So I've invested all my time and all my money over the last 20 years understanding why people do the things that they do and how we can communicate easily, effectively, and effortlessly every single time. So if I can do it, you can do it. If Danny can do it, you can do it. But with my my data coaches, they're like, oh, it's easy for you. Da, 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 da. I'm like, okay, yeah, but it wasn't always that way. Like I remember this really bright. This guy was amazing, man. 5 years ago, he was bright, enthusiastic, full of passion, but he only knew R and SQL, and he wanted to be a data scientist. And in order to become a data scientist, he had to learn Python. And I don't mean just Python scripting. Like this guy went all in, ripped the code to pieces, studied it noon, night, weekends. You know, his poor girlfriend was probably going, he loves Python more than he loves me, right? But what this bright spark did is he learned something that was uncomfortable for him at the beginning. But what he didn't realize was, this is just my observation and opinion, what he didn't realize was by putting himself, giving him that short bit of pain to learn something new, his whole future changed. And you know what? He went on to run a data science consulting business. He worked with some of the biggest businesses in Australia anyway, where most people look at him and go, geez, man, this guy is a guru. And then guess what? He set up a live stream and he shared all this free stuff because of his passion for others, because of his love of data. Okay? Nobody said change was going to be easy. But the great thing is about change is when you know more, you can be more. Can you? Sorry, dude. I had to use you there. That's right,
mate. You've mentioned it before that you always tell when you were doing the recruiting, you would tell my story as one of the goals that people could actually reach to. I'm super like grateful and happy that I can be that inspiration for people. And yeah, I'm just in a very privileged position to be where I am today and to be able to give back and help people.
But it's so cool. It's so cool that you do it, man. And I know you, right? It's like, you know, your love for this space and for mentoring people and, you know, just helping people. It comes from the greater good. And I think that's when you come back to that rapport piece. If you're coming from the greater good, right? Everything's okay. It's good. You know, and people sense that. It's you know, it really does. I think there's a lot of people online now, and my profession included. Look, don't get me wrong. We all have to earn a living, whether that be doing data science consultancy, being a data engineer, being a data analyst, being a communications coach or a transformational coach. We all have to earn a living, right? But if we do it from a sense of oneness, of like, you know, I'm doing this for others because I know that somebody did that for me, you know, by giving back to others and supporting other people. You come from that sort of energy and you know, on a universal level, you're just giving and giving and giving, and you're just going to get given and given and given and given, right? But if you're taking all the time, using these skills to manipulate other people, if you're taking it and you're using it for, you know, unmoral gain, whatever that is for you, my experience is that's what you're going to get back. But you're doing it for the greater good, which I love, and I'm so grateful that you asked me to be on here with you today.
Thanks again, Nick. You're a legend. I had one more point about the rapport. I'll tell a story. So back when I was working with, let's call it like a difficult client or a difficult team, difficult situation. I got I got some feedback, not on that. So I was trying to upskill some of the team members on, say, Python skills, for example, how to code, develop code in a more production quality manner. And I thought when I was delivering the presentations and the trainings, it all went really well. I was delivering the thing. I thought people really understood why we were doing some of those things and the purpose of it and how they can start using it, because some of the things that we need to change were very simple. But the feedback that I got from my boss at the time was that people thought that I was being disingenuous, that there was a mismatch where I might have been saying all the right words, I might have been smiling, but maybe deep down the motive was different. Maybe the motive was that I was just trying to show everyone that I was better than them because I have this knowledge, and now I get to share you this knowledge, so you should be grateful, or something like that. Something that I didn't even notice. Like personally for me, that's not how I usually operate. But I think sometimes when you get feedback like that, it really helps you reflect internally on how you felt during moments like that. What can you do to improve? Was there anything that you did that might have triggered the other party or the other communication counterpart that you have to actually get them to feel that way? So I think having, with the amount of information that we can get subconsciously with the unconscious mind, it's really important that you might not even know what you're doing to actually tick off someone else. You might be doing something that you don't even realize. And maybe that's the only thing that the other people see, and they don't see all the other goodness that's behind it as well. So what I'm saying is, when on your path to being a better communicator, it's always very good to get feedback from people. Because I think, let's say these days, for people who are interviewing for roles online, we're doing a lot of remote work because of the pandemic. I see a question from LinkedIn where, how do we have any tips for how you manage a phone interview when you're not face-to-face, where it's very difficult to gauge people's facial expressions, their body language, and having seen how important that is, like the body language and the non-verbal communication in real life. I think when you're on the phone, this is just my opinion, but I think having your facial expressions and your tonality and some of the verbal communication aspect of it becomes even more important, because you have less information to deal with. So imagine you're a machine learning model, and you're getting like no data on how people are behaving, or you're getting less data, and the only thing you see is their face and their voice. Of course, you need to use that data as much as possible. So Nick, do you have any insights on maybe some tips that some of the viewers can kind of take home for phone interviews and Zoom calls and all those sorts of things?
Well, let's cover one thing first, because you made a very valid point there. It's very important to get feedback, but it's also very, in my opinion, this is another presupposition of NLP, is there is no failure. There is only feedback. So if we take Danny's situation there, however Danny felt, or what he was thinking about after that feedback, that wasn't Danny failing. That was feedback, and feedback's good, because if you see it as feedback, you do whatever you can to improve on that in the future. So that's a great point to make. And on phone interviews, look, it goes back to what I said about, remember my coaching client John, who was working for Widgets R Us. You gotta listen. God gave us eyes, ears, and a mouth. Phone interviews, you gotta listen. And and I've been in recruitment for 22 years, right? So I've done a lot of phone interviews and got phone interview feedback. And you got to really switch. And this goes back to the law of requisite variety. You know, the person with the greatest behavioral flexibility has control of the situation. You want to listen before you speak, really, don't you? Because you want to gauge, is this person a serious person? Are they lighthearted? Are they very serious? Like, Danny, we are hiring an AI engineer and we want you to start tomorrow, right? Or are they like, hey, Danny, how are you? Yeah, we're looking for this really cool data scientist, really good with Python. I understand that's one of your skills. I'm looking at your CV. It's really good. So, you know, you want to listen to tonality. Blind people, you know, blind people's ears are their life. They're their eyes, right? And a blind person walks around listening attentively to everything that goes on around them, because that's their filter for communication. Phone interviews, right? People, and this is an unconscious pattern, right? And at the end of the day, all we are as people are memories, programs, and habits of our life to this point. Okay. So what happens if you're on a phone call unconsciously is you'll go, I'm on an interview. I need to be a little bit serious and I need to, you know, really be specific because it's a phone interview. If the other person's not like that on the other end of the phone, you're not going to build rapport, and it's going to be very, very good technically, but not very good emotionally in terms of communication skills, which is feedback I've had time and time again over the years for people I've had out to data jobs. So it's listening and, you know, and remembering what we've discussed here today. It's not all about what you know. Yes, that's important. Yeah, it's important to know, but that doesn't validate who you are for that job. So what I would do before I even started the phone call is I would go on LinkedIn. I would look at the person who's interviewing me, have the name, look at the person, and I profile people, right? I'm looking at them, what do they look like, what's their background academically, where have they come from, how have they got to. So I'm building a bit of a picture about them, and I'm thinking, okay, well, how can I tie my background into theirs? That's the first thing I would do. Secondly, I would look at the job description and go, okay, the skills, not skills what you're going to have in the future, but how do the skills that I have now match into that job description? Okay. Now that sounds simple stuff, doesn't it, people? But you'd be amazed how many people don't do it, right? And then when I make the phone call and I say, hello, Danny, I'm listening all the time, like a blind person does. That's my information for this part of this call, right? Are they upbeat? Are they grumpy? Are they serious? Are they detail orientated? Are they big picture? Do they not want to know about the detail? You know, listening to the language that they use and what the words that they say and the tonality is very important, and match that to the best of your ability. Okay. Like pace is, you know, somebody's on the phone there going, hey, Danny, so we're looking for this data science guru. You know, we need somebody with Python. We need somebody that does live stream video chats all across the world. And we need somebody that's going to be, you know, impactful, positive, proactive, right? I've had calls like that. And the other person on the end of the line is going like, oh my goodness, this isn't me. I'm a data scientist. I'm not really that live. You don't have to be like that, but you can be proactive. You can say, well, actually, you know, what I did in my role is I used my proactivity and my drive to use this data to get us to where we had to get to. And that meant, you know, working a bit earlier in the morning or a bit later at night, or maybe I worked through my lunch break, or maybe I had to collaborate with other people in a different team, but I had to communicate, right? You're not being that punchy, driven, proactive person, but your language and pace is matching theirs at an unconscious level. So that would be what I would do for phone calls. Look, Zoom's great. I love video. It's so cool, right? So it's about, again, you know, the example I use with Danny, matching as much as you can somebody's physiology. And the great thing is it's only from here up generally, okay? What's behind you is really important, because you know, you want to be in a neutral setting, ideally with as light a background as possible without any clutter going on behind you. just so you know, even if my cousin actually did a Zoom interview on the weekend, and she asked me the following questions, and her Zoom was like this, and if you look to the left, she has a toddler, and it was just stacked full of toys. But they don't need to know that, right? It's what they can visually see. Okay, and just remember hand gestures. You know, I see a lot of people on Zoom. Every hand gesture I use has a purpose. I'm not willy-nilly, I'm not sharing my hands trying to show you stuff and going like this, right? I'm not doing that. If I want to emphasize a point, I'll say, you know, learning communication skills is as easy as 1, 2, 3, because unconsciously that's reinforcing how easy it is to learn communication skills, right? But if I'm on a Zoom interview, I'm going to keep my hands as still as possible. I'm going to move my body, adjust to try and, you know, to work towards matching the other person's physiology. I'm going to, again, voice tonality, tempo is really important. Just telling the narrative is really important on a Zoom call. You know, because narratives are so important, especially, and the unconscious mind really processes narratives, and a narrative is a story, isn't it? Right? And symbols. So I remember this. Remember I told you about this really cool data guy, only knew R and SQL and then went into Python, right? And I met him a couple of years later, and he had this Team Turbo top on. Remember that Team Turbo?
Yep.
Team Turbo. And that Team Turbo stuck with me, and that was years ago. And I still use that story because symbols are really, really important and part of stories. So if you're giving examples on a Zoom call, you want to use stories where you create some sort of, if you can, symbology, but you know, if you can't, that's fine. It's a story. But telling a story is it say, well, I did this. A lot of people in when they're giving sort of stories and interviews, they use or examples, they use the words we. We is good. But if that person needs somebody that's an individual that's going to go against what they've currently got, using I did this, I was responsible for doing this. We ultimately achieved that through teamwork, but I drove that. I came up with the idea. And telling a story. So it's like, well, if they said to you on a Zoom call, give me an example of where you've used, I don't know, R to change a financial function in a platform or something like that. Tell the detail, but tell the story. Well, you know, my boss came to me and he said, we need to change this function. We've only got R to use. Can you do it? Look, it was a bit of a struggle for me. I'm going to be honest with you. I had to do some research and collaborate with some other people. But what I did was, through my efforts, I went in there and I really ripped that problem to pieces because I wanted to understand personally what the problem was so that I could do a better job. And once I understood the problem, it took me a lot. One night I worked till like midnight, and I remember my wife was going crazy at me, but it had to be done. It was a very important job. So I was doing all this work, and I got to the problem, and I understood it, and it made it a lot easier for me to create a different solution using R, which ultimately, it wasn't my intention, but it really allowed us to look at predictive modeling a little bit deeper in terms of, well, when might that person be looking for a car loan, or when might they be looking for a home loan in the future? And we were able to capture that. And then what we could do is we could transfer that and give a great data visualization to the team managers above my boss, where we could really demonstrate our value, not just for now, but for the future as well. And that was something I was very proud of. Something along those lines. Excuse my technical jargon, by the way. I'm not techie, but
the funny thing is that Nick's story that he just made up there is, I think it's taken from one of my personal stories.
You gave it away. You gave it away. I always remember those stories.
I remember telling Nick about that story, and I'm pretty sure I said something very, very similar, but I must have just been overflowing with the passion that I had for whatever I was working on. It didn't really matter what the problem was. The fact that I was there to work on a problem that I really wanted to solve, I think that was the key. And what you mentioned. Oh, yep. You go.
There you go. So I was just going to say one thing. Just remember, storytelling right? The unconscious mind loves it. Whether whoever it is, the unconscious mind learns and can, because it has to do with what we call a transdivisional search, which is short-term TDS. So what they have to do is they have to build a picture in their mind of the story that you're telling them, so it gets them more engaged, right? So if you're good at telling stories, you're good at engaging with people's unconscious minds. Sorry, Danny.
That reminds me of do you remember, I think it's Thinking Fast and Slow. There's like different brain patterns or different things where if you tell someone, don't think of a purple elephant, you instantly think of a purple elephant.
Think of a purple elephant. That's right.
Yeah. That's the famous analogy. And I think that when you tell your story, that's exactly what you're eliciting from someone. You're giving them the context. You're giving them how you felt when you were going through it. You were telling them about the struggles that you faced, why you wanted to solve the problem. And then in the end, when you actually got to the solution, how happy you felt, how happy you were of the impact that you could make financially or to other people's lives or to different things like that. I think when you take someone through that journey in a storytelling lens, it's much more powerful than if you just say it in like one line. I built a predictive model to predict when people were buying home loans for the next 30 days or whatever.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah,
but just capture that for a moment, because that was a beautiful example there. Whoever's on the call, I don't know if you sensed that, but when Danny was telling that story, and interviewers are doing the same thing, by the way, you had to go and compare into you remember I said to you about the 134 bits of processing? You had to go into that deep treasure chest of your mind to recall times where you did a similar thing to make sense of the story. That's the power of a story. So mate, that was beautiful. Thank you.
And I had something else on my mind. It'll come to me soon, but it was something around the same lines of.
It's still there.
It'll come back. I'll just jump in later when it comes back to my mind.
That's fine. That's fine. So yeah, that would be the main things for phone and Zoom interviews.
Oh yes, that was it. It was. Thank you, Nick, for sharing with us about the hand gestures on Zoom, and especially for interviews. Like we're always taught, use your hands to demonstrate what you're showing to people and to build rapport with your hands, because hand gestures are important. But on an interview, that might just I never thought of it, because my setup with all my cameras and everything, my hands are down here, so you can't see anything. But I always thought that in face-to-face interviews, doing hand gestures is really good. And I've not had to do any video interviews before in my life, so I have not much experience. But to hear it from you, to say that having too much going on with your hands actually detracts from what you're communicating in the actual interview, I think that's a really big call out. And
that's face-to-face as well. That's face-to-face as well, because in my advanced communications training, when we work with people and we help them to, get ready for huge presentations like 100 to 500 online or offline. What we train is, because we know, see, the unconscious mind, your eyes obviously are, they see everything, right? But what they do is they feed back information. And if I'm moving my hands in a presentation, I never do this, but if I was to do this, and I was saying, I was on, I remember this time when I met this great guy called Danny. I have talked about him a few times today. We met 5 years ago, actually, and he knew SQL and R, and he went on to blah, blah, blah. You are not unconsciously, you are not paying attention to what I'm saying. You're not hearing it because you're following my hands. Okay. So if we're already filtering, if we can only process 134 bits out of the 2 million, right? The hands are just taking more and more of it deep down into that unconscious treasure chest. But what I can say is, I can say, we got to the end of the project and it was finished. See, that unconsciously symbolizes the end, no more. So if somebody's talking to me in a meeting, right, and I just go, I don't want to hear any more of that. Great if you're a parent as well, by the way. Works wonders with the kids. So those sort of things, and you may have seen me do it a few times. If I want to really get the audience to think about something, I pause and I go, let's just think about that for a moment. Yeah, because unconsciously that's symbolizing for you to think. And what are some of the ones I use? So if I'm using visual language, which you would have seen me do at some point during the presentation, I just unpack it. I keep my hands like this. So we're going to let them show us where they're going to go, because that's really good visual for visual rep systems. Visual people love that. And occasionally I'll go, this was just where we were at. And that's how I felt. Because if I hold my hands open like that, that's kinesthetic, unconscious kinesthetic symbolic language. So I know that's reinforcing that to kinesthetic people. And it's like, so using your hands for a purpose is great, but just because you think it's good, yeah.
Like now that you mention it, I realized that you were doing some of those hand movements throughout this whole video. And
yeah, I do.
Yeah. But I was too engrossed in watching you on screen that I didn't even notice that you were doing those hand movements. I just understood what you were saying a lot better. Like, for example, you were saying like, oh, we've got the skill level of someone is from here and here, where it's a little bit lower, and then they increased it to somewhere higher. I think doing things like that, it's like being able to see those things is really valuable.
But it's for a purpose, right? It's for a purpose, and you want to have some visual, whether you're presenting, a dashboard, or whether you're doing a Zoom interview. You want to have some visual stuff in there because you want to appeal to somebody if they're visual. But if it's like this, and it's like, oh yeah, we did this, and me and Danny went, we did this over here, and it was like, oh my god, my head was going like this. It's phonetic. It's like the mind is going like, it's a bit busy for me. We don't want to be busy. We want to have that. Remember, we want to have that symphony, that connection, where the energy flows. Because as you rightly said, energy flows where attention goes.
100%. I know that. So we plan to go for 90 minutes for this session. We actually plan to do one really cool sort of process, but I don't know if we've got enough time for it, Nick.
No, probably. I'm just looking. I didn't realize what the time was, so we probably run over.
Time flies when you're having an awesome time.
When you're having fun, that's right.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the power of being really calm and clearing out your mind, so you don't have all of this, like where your attention is just all over the place, and where you're not able to focus on the person that you're communicating with, or just focus in general. Over the years, you've always been telling me, Danny, you need to do meditation. You need to sit and just clear your thoughts.
Yep.
And honestly, when we first met, I tried it, and it didn't. I felt that it wasn't. I was too busy. I wanted to I felt that when I was meditating, I was wasting time because I could have been learning Python or doing something.
Yeah.
But now when I'm running my own business now, and I have to make a lot of really big decisions, which will impact not just my finances, but my family's finances and people who might be working for me, and as well as the people who I might be helping with the services I'm doing through the business. So I think lately, when I've had to really make decisions, when you make decisions, you don't have all the information, and there's a lot of things that could go wrong and lots of risks, and do you have an operational plan in place? And all of those things can really overwhelm anyone. It doesn't matter if you're a business owner, if you're just working your role. Just having all this information and all the different choices that you could go causes a lot of, I call it like almost a storm inside your brain. And a couple of times throughout my career, I've had this storm just run in, and Nick is often the first person that I usually ask for help from. And Nick is always, I think straight away, Nick will ask me, Danny, have you been meditating? And I sheepishly will go, no, I haven't. But in the past, I think in the past few months, I've actually been trying to meditate like half an hour a day, and really trying to clear out my mind. So when I have this, I find when we make decisions or when we get inspiration or serendipity, it's always when your mind is very clear. Like if you have too many things going on, you're not going to get those moments of inspiration. And once I realize this, I really make an effort to just spend some time and clear my mind. I sit down, I go for a walk, and I actively try not to think about anything. And like if I could share one of the soft skills that I learned throughout my time learning from Nick and through working on different projects and trying to present and all of those different things, oftentimes when I found that my best performance was when my mind was almost empty. Like there was the only thing that I was focusing on was one thing and not many things all at the same time. And I could really dedicate all my energy and really feel the purpose of what I was doing because I didn't have 50 different things that I was trying to keep a track of. So Nick, do you want to add anything in terms of just that clarity and the...
I could talk about this for about 4 hours, but I'll try and get it into 3 minutes. So as I said to you at the beginning, okay, my purpose is to take Eastern philosophy and Western philosophy, to take in the Eastern inner fulfillment and happiness and Western external success and bring those together so that you can live the life of your dreams. The key component to the Eastern philosophy part of that, living the life of your dreams, is meditation. In my experience, I've been meditating for over 22 years. And
wow.
Once you have control of your mind, it doesn't have control over you. So and I believe when you're in that, I call it the nothingness. After time, your mind is still. There is no mind chatter. When you're in that space, you will get your greatest insights. You will get your greatest inspirations. Because in that nothingness is the abundance of everything. Because when you're in that space, that what you said, keeping your mind calm, Danny, right? You're not in a space, you're in yourself. And the great thing about being in yourself, in that, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, or whatever you decide to do a day, when you're in there, the mind has no control over you. And what I find is you just process stuff and other information. So you process stuff on this side and it goes and the mind becomes still. And then on this side, you get little flashes of inspiration come in and it's like, oh, that book. Oh, that person I should connect with. But that only happens in the stillness. And very simply, and I know, look, whoever's on the call, meditation is a big thing. There's so many different types of meditation at the moment. My preferred choice is to use a mantra, but that doesn't have to be a verbal mantra. That can be like the sound of a fridge at home. That can be the sound of a ceiling fan. You just close your eyes and listen to a repetitive sound, and that distracts the mind. Right now, I love the way you use the word storm, because out of all the hundreds of people I've worked with in data and technology, most of them are highly ID. If we go back to the rep systems, highly ID people have very, very active process data driven knowledge minds, right? And they're always in a storm. But the real creation comes when you calm the storm. And the way to calm the storm is meditation. And listen, I actually wrote it in my journal after meditation this morning. It's the foundation for everything, in my opinion and experience, because once you calm your mind, you are in control of your destiny, not your minds, not your habits, not your memories, not what happened yesterday. You are in control. And that, for me, is the foundation of inner fulfillment, happiness, and living the life of my dreams. But it takes practice.
Very, very profound.
But I could talk about that for hours. So there you go. That's my little download.
Yeah, I think I think this brings us to the conclusion of this session on a very, very high note. I hope everyone who joined us on the call got a ton of value out of our conversation. Knowing, if you guys know me, Nick, in person, we could talk for hours and hours without breath. Like, we probably just need a coffee.
Exactly. And this is without coffee.
Yeah. And so I hope that we'll try and do this more often, just because we like catching up. And I just think everyone who listens to this will definitely be able to pick up at least a few things. And I really wanted to share our sorts of conversations to anyone else who wants to learn about being a better communicator, being able to incorporate some of these Eastern philosophies and the different things and outside the box thinking into your day-to-day lives to be a better data professional, to be just in general a better person. I think it's super, super valuable. So Nick mentioned 2 different resources that I think one of them was his representation systems. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nick. And the other one is the Deloitte paper on the future of work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share them directly on my Slack channel for anyone who's watching this and is not already a part of it. Please check out this link that I'm going to pop up on the screen right now. It's also going to be the same link directly on my LinkedIn profile. But I hope everyone has had a great 90 minutes. Thank you, Nick, so much for your time.
Thank you, man. Honestly, I love hanging out with you. It's so cool. Love it. Thank you.
Mate, you're an inspiration. And thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And take care and have a great day. Stay safe and all the best. Thanks, everyone.
Have an awesome day.
Have an awesome